Good evening. My name is Grace Hayek, and on behalf of the Glencoe Public Library, I welcome you to our webinar tonight on the Nachusa Grasslands, which is going to be presented by Susan Kleiman, who's a naturalist and a longtime volunteer at Nachusa. This program is presented in partnership with the Friends of the Green Bay Trail. Special thanks to Becky Maganuco and Meredith Clement for playing a huge role in making this happen. Now, I'd like to introduce our presenter. Susan Kleiman holds a bachelor's degree in forestry and wildlife management and a master's degree in environmental education and interpretation. She's been a Nachusa volunteer for 3 decades. She's also an educator at Byron Forest Preserve District. Her favorite nature subjects are the benefits of restoration, birds, plants, and frogs of restored sites. Susan, it's really great to have you here tonight, and I'll let you take it from here.
Okay, thank you. Yes, so hi, everybody. Glad you came out on this beautiful evening. I hope you have your windows open. A little bit about me, I guess, besides what Grace already said. I've been volunteering or working at Nachusa since 1993. My husband is the manager. His name is Bill Kleiman. And we came here in 1993. The preserve started in 1986, but our story was that we were looking for something meaningful to do. And we've been traveling around a bit. He's from Illinois. I'm from Maryland. I got my master's out here. I met him that way. We had been in Colorado a little bit, and then this job came up. And I said to him, "You're perfect for this job." So we moved back to Illinois because we wanted to help restore prairie, a very rare ecosystem. So that's just a little bit about my story. It's going to be a relatively short program, 20 minutes maybe, and then lots of time for questions. Some of you may have been here before. Some of you know something about restoration. Some of you maybe don't know anything at all. And if you have more questions than I can provide, you can always look at our website, nachusagrasslands.org. Before I start with the first slide, I want to sort of do a land acknowledgement. We've been doing that more lately. It's just a way of recognizing the indigenous people that stewarded the land before us, and we'd like to honor those people by recognizing them. All right. So, Nachusa Grasslands started with 397 acres in 1986. We are now over 4,000 acres. The Nature Conservancy is an international group whose mission is to preserve the lands and waters on which all life depends. And they do this all around the planet, but especially here in North America. Staff and volunteers at Nachusa Grasslands work very closely together. There's a group called the Friends of Nachusa Grasslands. It's another 501c3 that is there to help the preserve, not-for-profit charitable giving. And the reason for the Friends is to help raise an endowment to fund the preserve long-term. We also conduct and encourage stewardship. We support science and education, and we protect more land when we can sometimes get in there faster and help out. We have many volunteers, some of which we call stewards, who actually have adopted units on the preserve, and they oversee the stewardship done there. We could use your help too, so come on out. Nachusa Grasslands is located in portions of Lee and Ogle County. We kind of straddle it. It's in the Middle Rock River area. And as you can see, there are many other natural areas nearby, mostly state lands, but sometimes parks, like the Meadows Park is part of Dixon's city park system. And you can see there south of us is Franklin Creek State Natural Area. And north of us is the very large Loudoun Miller State Forest and Castle Rock State Park. But we can also see up in the top Loudoun State Park, which has the Black Hawk statue, if you've ever been out here. White Pines Forest State Park, which does originally have some native white pines, but has many, many planted in rows as well. And even further north of us is the Byron Forest Preserve District, which has lands. People often wonder about our name. They're very curious. So John Dixon is Nachusa. He came to Lee County from New York City. He was on very good terms with the Native Americans. This is about 1830. He ran a trading post and had an inn by the river. The Sac and Fox tribes called him something like Nachusa Grasslands, or Nachusa has come down to us with a shortened name. It meant something like the man with the long white hair. And since the original purchase of the preserve was in Nachusa Township, we decided to call the property Nachusa Grasslands. Many other places have the name Nachusa attached to them around here, including a town, a village, a home for youth, roads, a rock layer, and a soil. Nachusa has many types of habitats because of our location. In Illinois, this natural area division is named the Rock River Hill Country. We're slightly hilly with woods and prairies, wetlands, dry places, all mixed together. And this is because the last glaciers didn't squish us flat. The last glaciers were north of us and their meltwaters eroded through here and gave us our topography. The Nature Conservancy calls the larger area we are in the Prairie Forest Border Ecoregion. And as you can see, it's between the central tallgrass prairie and the superior mixed forest ecoregions. Most of Chicagoland is either in the Prairie Forest border or the Great Lakes ecoregion, as you can see from the green there next to Lake Michigan. Nachusa has many parts. We have remnant prairies, we have wetlands, we have oak savannas, as well as many farm fields that we're restoring back to prairie as best we can. We have over 136 separate prairie plantings. If you want to learn about each one's history, you can actually go to the website and read about each one. We have many remnants, mostly prairie, spared from the plow due to the sandstone and limestone at the surface. If you don't know already, these layers of rock were laid down about 466 million years ago, give or take, when North America was closer to the equator and we were covered by an inland ocean here. And this is before fish. I work with kids a lot, so they always want to find a dinosaur fossil. And I tell them those layers were all scraped away. All the layers around here are even before fish. The remnants provided us with the species to harvest from to put in the restorations. Although we sometimes accepted seed for certain more medium moist soils from the regional remnants in the area. Not too many moist and wet soil prairies left. Most of those were plowed. These drier areas remained because you couldn't plow the rocks, so they were grazed. And if they weren't herbicided, then some of the natural character remains. Right now, we have plenty of seed to harvest right from the preserve. We rarely have to go outside the preserve for any seed. The seed is hand cut with scissors and pruning shears because each species is ripe at a different time. So we have to do it between, say, mid-June and November, depending on when the species is ready. We do sometimes use a combine in the fall to harvest large quantities of grassland seed, like little blue stem. Our plantings vary quite a bit. Yes, this is a prairie planting. They vary because of the seed available that year or the plans of the steward who heads the collecting and planting of that site. And they vary because of the soil, which would influence the decision of what to collect. This sandy slope is near some oaks and had a lot of lupin seeds planted because of the woodlands we have lupins in them. So we thought it would be a good fit. Our stewards are volunteers who spend a lot of time here. They're sort of the Uber volunteer, and they know a lot and they've learned a lot and they work together a lot. But some of our plantings are made by students that we hire for the summer, our seasonal crew. This slide shows this very similar to where you just were in the previous slide, just downhill from it. This is Echinacea pallida. This is in June. The previous slide is about now in May with the lupins, and this would be next month. So a good time to come and visit. The preserve has over 700 native species of plants. That would include trees and shrubs, grasses, flowers. We haven't even listed all of the mosses and lichens yet, although there are experts out now looking at those things. And we have recorded 235 bird species that have been on the preserve. Not all of those are breeding, of course. Some are migrating through or are here only in the winter. We have a variety of wetlands, from ponds and springs to wet prairies. This is a wetland we restored by removing the elms that had invaded it due to lack of fire. It is surrounded by oak savannas. No seed was added to this. This is just what came up from the seed bank. The entire preserve is so well known to everybody, and especially the stewards of each area, that we know exactly where the weeds are, and we have special mapping software now to use. And so each year we go out and try to reduce the number of weeds by sometimes hand digging with a spade or carefully targeted spraying, or sometimes, if we're late in the season, just the removal of the seed head to keep the seed from going around. We also have a variety of streams on the preserve. These are often high quality and harbor many uncommon and even rare species, including a rare caddisfly, which was very exciting when that was found. We have a River Watch volunteer citizen science program that monitors our streams several times a year. Our little streams, like this one, Wade Creek, and also Clear Creek, flow into Franklin Creek, which we have some portions of, which flows into the Rock River. We even have towering St. Peter sandstone formations like this, and sometimes in a few spots, some dolomite limestone outcrops, each with their own suite of species. I enjoyed discovering a plant on top of one of these rock outcrops. One spring, I was out and about with Bill, and there was Canada Mayflower. And I said to myself, this is not on the list. I was right, it was not on the list yet. It's more of a northern species, so it's kind of fun to find those here. In our woodlands, we mow brush and thin trees, and we do nearly annual prescribed fire. The woodlands and savannas are looking pretty good, we think. Right now, we're starting to, the last summer or two, we're making more of an effort to move some of the rarer seeds in the woods around and collect them and put them in areas where they aren't. We often apply herbicide to cut stems or standing stems of invasive brush like honeysuckle, buckthorn, and multiflora rose. But the burning keeps them short as well and keeps them from going to seed. We are very pleased to have red-headed woodpeckers show up several decades ago now. When I first started, there were no red-headed woodpeckers here, and with the work we do in the woods and the purchases we've made and the thinning we've done, the red-headed woodpeckers have returned. In the mid-90s, when I first came here, the bird experts were telling us that they thought the red-headed woodpecker would become super endangered or extinct because they need open oak forests. And they're not doing well in a lot of places, but they're thriving here. They're unusual because not only do they peck the trees to get the bugs out, they also eat acorns and sort of store the acorns sometimes, not quite as much as an acorn woodpecker in the Southwest in California, but they do store some acorns, and they fly catch. They'll fly out from a perch and grab a bug from the middle of the air. So I don't think any other woodpeckers do that. So they need those open spaces. Since we are grassland, we need fire, of course, but also grazing is needed. We had the goal of returning bison as our grazers from nearly the beginning of the preserve. When my husband started working, his boss said to him, "What do you think about bison? We could bring him here." And my husband said, "We can do that?" He was very excited. We thought about doing it when we were about 900 acres, a decade or two ago. But in researching, we really found that we weren't quite big enough yet. We wanted enough bison that they acted like a herd. It became a dream came reality rather, in the fall of 2014 with the introduction of 30 wild bison. They can roam 1,500 of the 4,000 acres, with plans to include more acreage when we fence it in. To prevent overgrazing, we reduced the herd to about 100 for the winter. More about that later. But we have over 100 and some, and they have about 30 babies a year now. These bison come from the wind cave genetic pool. They might have lived for a while in our South Dakota and Iowa preserves. The wind cave group is a pretty unique genetic group of animals, and there's very little cattle genes in them. And the federal government at Wind Cave National Park has about, I don't know, 600 or 800 animals, and the specialists were saying that they need to have thousands, but it's very short and dry there, and they really can't support that many. And the Nature Conservancy said, well, why don't we take some animals and we'll pretend like it's all one big herd, even if they're out, a dozen different preserves. So we trade them around with the park, but we're also doing some other trading of them, and I'll explain that a little bit later in the slideshow. We brought them here because of the way they graze. They eat almost exclusively grasses and sedges, although I did see 2 years in a row, one cow eat an entire common milkweed plant, 2 different times. Anyway, their grazing of the grasses keeps it from dominating, so they'll allow the flowers to be more numerous. The herd moves a lot, so they can't possibly graze everything completely short. But as you can see here in this winter slide, there's some grasses still tall and some are short. This makes it nice and patchy, lots of different mosaic of habitats. Some of this will burn well, some of it won't. Some birds like it burned and open, some birds like it dense and unopened. Like the grasshopper sparrow really likes a lot of space between the plants, but the bobolink, that's a bird, likes it really dense. We have these exclosures, which are electrified and keep out bison and deer. And so they can't graze inside, they're very small. But you can see on the outside, they have grazed quite a bit, and at least in part of this area, and you can see the leaves of one of the flowers sticking up there. Most of that is stiff goldenrod. They really like this Indian grass. It's a planting. It's one of their favorite grasses. Here's a winter shot showing the electric charger on the fence there. We have over 20 of these exclosures in a variety of habitats. So we study and measure the plants inside and out to study the effects of bison over time. Another thing bison do, of course, is wallow. They do this to remove fur and insects, to scratch and itch, and it's a super important part of their social interaction. There might be a little one in there rolling around, and as soon as the big guy comes, the little one scampers up and gets away, and the big guy rolls around. The rolling back and forth, of course, creates shallow depressions. If these fill with water, usually temporarily, there'll be new habitat for amphibians, certain insects, and even occasionally the odd plant species. One of the other things, if it's a dry wallow, is that there are certain bees that nest there. So these little mounds of sand are from bees that have dug holes, and that's their little, piles excavating these chambers underneath. One of our young bee enthusiasts was researching bees, and he noticed this, and he sort of switched his study to work on studying these bees, some of which are really rare, and they're very small, most of these. These things are less than ½ inch long. This is a really close picture, and you can see them on the right digging a hole down there. One of the things the bison do is their hooves really can, crack the soil a bit, and that helps with aeration, apparently, for the plant roots, and it gives little spaces for seeds to grow. You can also see seeds stuck to the head of the bison on the left. This can be good and bad, of course, because they can also move around. Burdock, which is a weed, but it's pretty uncommon, so we don't worry about that one too much. The bison dung and urine are important sources of nitrogen, phosphorus, calcium, sulfur, and magnesium, apparently. These are important for microbes in the soil and the plants, of course. And there are even other animals, of course, that use the dung directly, like dung beetles and flies. Yes, we study this, hence the spade. I even saw a turkey vulture once removing beetle larvae from a not brand new patty like this, but a little bit older one that had beetle larvae in it. So each year we round them up in the fall. This is required by state law, and it's a good idea because they get a little vet check and they get their vaccinations, especially the young ones, the new ones. The microchips are put in the calves' ears, so they all have a microchip. And we're studying them too. So we'll take a tail hair for genetic sampling sometimes. There's been a scientist the last few years that's studying their gut microbiomes. So she's taking a little dung sample from their back end. Lots of fun during the roundup. The roundups are 1 day, and we try to do it very gently because it stresses them out. To prepare them for getting in there, we start enticing them with bison treats. They're sort of pellets of molasses and alfalfa. And a certain tractor goes around, makes a sound, and they learn to follow that for their treats. And we get them closer and closer to the corral. And then the night before the roundup, we get them into the corral. We use Temple Grandin's corral design. Temple Grandin works at the University or Colorado State in Fort Collins, and she's an expert in livestock management and being really gentle and working with their natural tendencies. So the curves and the zigzags you see in there apparently help. They think they can get around the corner. We like to call ourselves the bison whisperers. The entire roundup, after they're in the corral the evening before, only takes part of the next day. And the actual restraining is all done in about 1 minute. So the animals are not stressed too much. And one of the exciting things happening for us lately is because we have excess bison, we have been partnering with the Intertribal Buffalo Council, which has many member nations of Native peoples in the United States. And we are returning excess bison to them. And this is a good benefit and gives them spiritual and cultural revitalization. Ecological restoration and conservation on their reservation lands. It gives them food sovereignty, economic development, health initiatives, the whole shebang. We had a group come out from Wisconsin, I think from the Menominee tribe, to learn about harvesting bison. And there was a couple from the Lakota tribe in South Dakota that came and showed them how to field harvest the bison and what parts you could eat. And then they all went back to Wisconsin to share with the tribe and learn more about how to use every part of the animal, because some of these things are lost and many tribal peoples would like to learn more. Last year, in all of the Nature Conservancy, we were able to give 857 bison born and raised on our preserves back to their homes in 24 different indigenous communities around the nation, including Alabama, North Dakota, Wisconsin, New York, and many other places. And for the first time, the Intertribal Buffalo Council was able to fulfill all the requests they had from their member nations. I know you all want to come out and see them, so you can. We do have bison tours May through October. We found that we can't really let people sign up in May for October because they might not come. So on the 1st of each month, on our website at 7 o'clock in the morning, you can try to sign up for the hikes or the tours they're in a truck for that month. So it's really fun. We use open pickup trucks with really comfortable benches, nice easy ladder to get in, sort of a stepping stool kind of thing, 3 steps up. No guarantee you actually see them though. Most of the time we see them, we drive right inside their unit and they don't seem to mind the vehicles, but every once in a while, they're really hard to get spot that we can't drive to because we stay in our lane so that we don't accidentally drive over turtles or bird nests or anything. So June 1st, if you want to come in June, you can sign up 7 o'clock in the morning. Do check out our webpage. That's where you can sign up for the bison tours. We have occasional other hikes as well. And there's a whole bunch of information here. NachusaGrasslands.org. It's maintained by volunteers with the Friends of Nachusa Grasslands. The Nature Conservancy has a page on us as well. If you get on their site, nature.org. But you can learn a lot here. As you can see, there's all these different things you can tag on to find out more about stuff. Our newsletters are on here. We have blogs and all kinds of things. When you come, it'll direct you to our visitor center, which is a big educational pavilion, which has educational information there. It'll have a hike map. You can go hiking in about 5 different areas that we suggest that don't have bison. One is in that stone barn savanna where the rock outcrops are. Another one is in where those photographs of lupins and pale purple coneflowers are. Those are prairie plantings mostly, with a few little outcrops. And there's even a creek you can walk across. Usually you have to take off your shoes. And what else do I want to tell you about that? Well, if you want to volunteer, you can do that too. Oh, also, you could come out to Autumn on the Prairie. This is our annual festival, 1 day a year, the 3rd Saturday in September. This year it's the 16th. And we'd love to have you come and volunteer. As you can see, we're a diverse group of people, all ages, from all walks of life. And we have work days on Thursdays and Saturdays. Also, please sign up so we know how many are coming. You can also donate to help out, of course. But we need your help to fix and restore and keep healthy one of the rarest ecosystems on the planet. Remember, we're all part of the land, not separate from it. Thanks for listening. I'm available for questions now.
Thank you so much. That was so refreshing, and those photographs are so beautiful. Who took the photographs?
Dee Hudson, she's
okay.
a volunteer, and then she was so amazing that when we had a part-time opening for administrative assistant, we said, we want you. We interviewed a bunch of people, but she really is the best one.
Yeah, I think so.
She has a big skill set.
Yeah. Well, there are, there were starting to be questions in the Q&A before I even finished introducing you, so which I've never seen that before. So I think a lot of people want to talk about things, especially bison. But before we get going, I want to tell people I looked it up, and from the library here in Glencoe, Nachusa Grasslands is 1 hour and 54 minutes away under current traffic conditions, and it's 109 miles, and it's west-southwest of Glencoe. Just FYI. I was thinking it was way far south, but it's not. It's far west.
No, sort of halfway between Chicago and the Quad Cities.
Right. And then you also mentioned that there were some non-bison tours of Nachusa.
Occasionally, we've been starting to do hikes. Like last Saturday, my husband did a hike in the savannah, and we just publicize those mostly on Facebook lately, because it's sort of just as people have time. Yeah, so yeah, look for Nachusa Grasslands Facebook, and there's I guess it's probably friends of Nachusa Grasslands, but just do Nachusa Grasslands, you'll find a Facebook page. We also have photographers of Nachusa Grasslands Facebook page if you want to see lots of pretty pictures.
Okay,
they're both pretty pictures.
So it wouldn't necessarily be on your website. It might be just on Facebook.
Yeah, it may or may not be, but you can look. I don't always look, so sometimes I don't know.
I know updating websites is kind of a deal. Okay, great, thank you. Let's get to some questions. Start with an easy one. Somebody wants to know, how many bison are there? I don't remember you mentioning that.
Yeah, so there's about 100 over the winter, and then they have about, I think, about 30 calves nowadays. We start out small. We got 30 to begin with, and the next year they had, I think, 14 calves, and the year after that 20 some calves. So yeah, a lot. So the ones we keep over winter are the mamas and the babies, and then a variety of the other ages, and we give away to the tribes a variety of ages, not usually the calves and mothers and babies, although a couple of them have asked for those. So if the calf is big enough, we send it with its mama.
Robert has 2 questions. How do you get along with the bison, and do you ever have incidents with them?
Mm-hmm. We get along pretty well. We do consider them wild, so we're careful. I've definitely gone out to do stewardship in the bison unit and said, oh, no, they're there. They're laying down. They're not moving for a while. I guess I'll go do something else. They don't mind the vehicles. So if you have to drive past them, we can. or there's sometimes other ways to go around if you don't want to bother them. Once in a while I've got a little closer, or they've got closer to me than I wanted, but they were fine. But I backed out just in case, we don't want to have any incidences. The oddest incident I saw was a pregnant female bluff charged a fence at D when she was taking pictures, and she was 30 yards from the fence. She was quite a ways away, but it was just in a mood. She didn't even have a calf yet. She was just in a mood. So a couple of times she charged the fence, even though we even backed up. So because I have this coming along and saw it happen. One time a pair of bulls got out and wouldn't go back in. They didn't care about being with the herd. They were old enough. So we had to deal with that and ended up eating them. Sorry, but they're not pets. So, yeah.
That's one way to deal with them. It sounds that generally you don't, the volunteers and the visitors are more respectful perhaps of the bison than you see in the incidents in Yellowstone National Park.
Yes.
Where people just don't have the right boundaries with them.
Yeah, we have a lot of signs. Some say we have too many signs. You know how you get tired of reading signs. We try not to have too many, but they're up all around the fences saying, wild bison, look out. And there's a little stick figure being thrown by a bison in the cartoon. But people have been really good. I mean, every once in a while, someone will drive across the cattle guard, even though it says no public access. But that's once or twice. The Yellowstone herd particularly is tricky because there's a lot of people visiting there and they're completely wild, never rounded up. So they have absolutely no fear of humans. So they just knock you over as soon as anything. Ours are a little more wary. Like I gave a tour through Highland Community College, came out with people right at the end of April, and the calves had just started dropping. I had never seen the herd so nervous. They did not like it that we were pulling up near them. And just hearing my voice, I stepped out of the vehicle. I wasn't even that close to them. And, started explaining about the bison to people, and they just took off. I'm like, oh, well, that's new. Usually they don't mind me being I just use a normal, quiet voice talking, and calves less than 2 weeks old, they're not having it. So they're a little nervous sometimes. So yeah, different from Yellowstone. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But one reason why people can't go in the bison unit without a guided tour.
Right.
Yeah.
Shelley and Jim want to know, what's the purple flower on the first page of your slideshow?
Oh, that's Ohio spiderwort, Tradescantia ohioensis. Lovely, lovely plant. It's got the 3-parted flower, really skinny leaves. It's a monocot. Really juicy plant. It's a weird plant. I love it. It's about to bloom too. It's about to pop. Turtles love that. The box turtles eat that. If you pick it, it would be just all gooey with liquid inside. And the seeds are a little hard to pick. You have to pick it slightly green. You can't wait till the whole plant dries out, because each day or so another flower opens up and then starts kind of wilting, and it'll stain your fingers purple. So when it's sort of halfway through its drying process, then we'll go and cut heads, and then we have to, it's the hardest one to dry. You got to spread all the seeds out and dry them until they're good and dry, and then they can be put in a mix in the fall. We usually plant in the fall, although once in a while, we'll find something that's ripe in June and we know exactly where we want to put it, and we'll just pick it and, it's ready to go and plant it. But most of the time when we're planting like a new field, we just tell the farmer, these 30 acres aren't going to be yours next year to use. Okay, they know that's the deal. And then we'll plant 5, 10, 30, 100 acres, depending on the effort done that year. And so the seeds like to overwinter. They like to be frozen and thawed, and all that, to break the seed coat, and they'll germinate better in the spring if they've had the winter to hang out in the soil. And we don't plant them deep. We just put them right on top.
Thank you. Somebody wants to know if you plan to enlarge the Nachusa site in the near future.
Yeah, we have ideas and pieces we want. As they become available, we pay appraised value. That's all. We also pay taxes, by the way. A lot of local people get mad at us. They think we don't pay taxes, and they think we took 4,000 acres off the tax rolls, but we pay taxes, even though we're a nonprofit. Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. Yeah. But I can't say where.
But could happen.
Sure.
Do you or the Nature Conservancy advise other locations and organizations in the U.S. in restoring prairies?
Yeah, in a
Share your wisdom
sort of way. Sure. Yeah. I mean, we're a big group. We have a huge office in Arlington, Virginia, and we have a big office in Chicago and an office in Peoria and many other states. There's a chapter in every state. And then we have some actual offices out of the country, but more often than not, we'll partner with, other nonprofits in other countries. But yeah, sure. Yeah, we can help with that. There's a lot of resources out there. Look on our website if you want more resources. There's also a group, if you just want to plant some prairie in your yard or a small farm holding you have, the Wild Ones is a nonprofit that is into, that's their thing, is planting natives. So that's a really good resource. And they have chapters all over, including Rockford, and probably there's one in the Chicago area too, the Wild Ones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're very active around here. And for the extremely local angle, the people who help bring this program to you, the Friends of the Green Bay Trail, are really knowledgeable.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they have this
open lands,
any little property that is a trail,
but
it's lovely.
Yeah,
and
great.
Heavily used now that it's so
operational. Yeah, great.
And it's a big project just to get that much done in an urban environment, especially.
Yeah, you guys have it tougher, Yeah.
Okay, Beth, who I know from Go Green Wilmette, hello Beth, wants to know if there were a group that wanted to arrange for a tour, is that possible, and would there be a charge?
There's no charge. It's only a matter of sort of the volunteers available that are willing. So again, you can get on our website and there's a place where you can ask those kind of questions, maybe give a range of dates or something. We tend to do it for groups that are like-minded, that are also, from a nonprofit or, groups that do restoration and that kind of thing. Those sort of take priority. Or local school groups, sometimes that kind of thing. Yeah, so it's not a hard no, it's a possibility, but not usually family reunions and stuff like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Got it.
People get talked into that.
Okay. Joyce wants to know, has the presence of bison impacted the prairie, and is grazing a means of improvement?
That's
specifically
the idea,
wallowing, and I think you covered that actually.
Yes, I did a bit, but
yeah.
We are constantly studying that. There is so much science. I didn't even touch on hardly any of that. There is so much science going on in this preserve. We have a person, that's her sole job, Dr. Elizabeth Bach. She's the scientist on staff, and she handles all of the restoration studies. So we have people from Northern Illinois University, Bradley University, U of I, Southern Illinois University, Rutgers University, university out in the San Diego area. And then just researchers generally, like with Natural History Survey and stuff. There's a lot of research, some of it related to bison and some of it not, but that's always a factor, right? So yeah, we want to know, how they're affecting the mice and the voles and the grass and the beetles and bees and the soil, and yeah, right. That's the idea though is for them to graze. Prairies evolved with grazing. So they put that mosaic in there, some short, some tall, more flowers, wallows, and the stuff that's really, really short. When we do a prescribed fire, some of that doesn't burn. It used to be we'd burn and everything would turn velvet black, but now it's patchy. So some of it burns, some of it doesn't. So it's just great because then there's more insect refugia in those, because insects live in the stems of plants and stuff like that. So, and we're doing really well by our insects. We have one of the largest populations of regal fritillaries here. It's a butterfly, and its larvae only eat certain violets. And so we try not to burn up all of the clumps of violets every year. So we always think about that when we create our burn units. Like, oh, no, can't do that hill this year because it's time to leave it out for the violets. Because all over winter is, I think, eggs, maybe larvae, I forget. Yeah, we're studying the effects of bison a lot. Yep.
Excellent. Thank you. And then we've got a question from Ann and Hall. And they say you talked a lot about collecting seeds on site. Can you discuss a little bit more about how and from where you got the seeds to supplement what was already there in the beginning?
Mhm.
Like, is it from within a 50-mile radius or?
Right. Yes. Yes,
Oh.
definitely from within 50-mile radius. So there are a little tiny handful of preserves here and there within 50 miles that have seeds that we don't have, for example. Like we didn't seem to have any New Jersey tea, for example. And there's a little teeny tiny triangle shaped remnant south of here. I think it's in Bureau County. I'm spacing out its name right now. And it has a ton of New Jersey tea on this little tiny corner of a farm field that never got plowed. And it's a nature preserve now. And maybe some of the audience doesn't know, we're talking nature preserve, capital N, capital P. And Illinois Nature Preserve is the highest protection a piece of land can get in Illinois. It has to be pretty high quality to be considered for that. And it's, you know, some is public land and some is private land. I know some people on their lands, they happen to have really good wetland, for example, and they put that in the nature preserve. Yeah, it really high quality and, you know, you can't screw it up. You know, there's all these rules about it. So, yeah, so like if we wanted to collect seed on nature preserve, we have to ask the Nature Preserves Commission, can we pick X seed at this time, at this spot and put it on ours? And they might say yes or no. Usually they say yes for us, but yeah. So it's tricky. That's one of the main things we do is to pick the seed. One of the cool things we reintroduced was the white fringe prairie orchid, really rare. And we were able to show that it had existed in Lee and Ogle counties and we had the right soil types and stuff. So I think it was in the mid-90s. We've got a little tiny capsule of powder. Their seed is really tiny. We mixed it with many, many gallons of sand and then just flicked it with spoons in all these wet soils. By golly, they grew. And you know where they grew the best? The stuff that was a farm field and was recovering, a wetland that we'd taken all the drainage pipes out, the tile they call it, and had a lot of space still for the roots. And in the sedge meadow where there's a lot of native plants, a few of them grew, but it was already really full. And so the orchid couldn't make many inroads there, but it's doing really well in a restored wetland. So that's kind of exciting. And we go out and try to hand pollinate it because we don't know if there's enough sphinx moths to do the pollinating. People suspect, at least that's what I heard. There may be new information now. I'm not up on all things white fringe prairie orchid, but I think they were thinking that the sphinx moth might be extinct that pollinated it. But I think some do, but they're far and few between. So we go out and move the little package of pollen around and try to get seeds.
I got a Q-tip.
Yes, toothpick, tiny, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And the 50-mile radius, is that to make sure that it's a hyper local, you know, this is.
Yes, that's the reasoning. Again, people are sort of studying this, but the thinking is that if you go too far outside, the genetics may not be as good a fit. It may be from a hotter place, a wetter place. Yeah, there's the occasional plant though, like there's a I think it's Aster furcatus, forked aster. We just have a handful. They don't seem to be producing seed. So that we'd be willing to, you know, exchange pollen or bring in plants if allowed from other places or seed from other places to try to get some cross pollination going. So there's a couple of odd plants that, you know, are specialty cases, but yeah, but that's the idea though, is to, you know, like we wouldn't want to bring a plant here, even like certainly we're going to bring a plant here that's not from here originally, like from, you know, Maryland or something. But you wouldn't even Maryland might have little blue stem, but you wouldn't want to switch the genetics around because what if it's a bad thing? Unless you can prove it's a good thing.
Okay, really interesting.
Yeah.
Well, Hall and say thanks a lot. What tremendous work you're doing. We love it there. Two more bison questions.
I think I
know each other. Yeah, he's very active. Oops, I'm sorry. There's a couple more questions.
Sure. Yep.
And then I'll take like three more. Two more bison questions. Does your herd have a leader, and do you track the age of your bison?
We can track the age because they all have a microchip in their ear. So They even came with those. So most of the herds in the US are managed somehow. So I believe we know the age of all of them. Certainly the ones that were born here, we know their ages. But I think even the ones we brought originally had a microchip and they knew the ages. And now there's no one leader, or not that we can tell anyway. How about that? Because it's not like we have them numbered with big tags or anything. So, occasionally you can tell that, like right now, there's about 9 bulls that just kind of hang by themselves. It's not time to mate yet. And there's 2 other bulls that also hang by themselves. And then the rest of the herd is together. But a little bit this spring, there were sort of 2 groups of, the younger ones and the mamas and the babies and the middle-aged ones. So you just never know, really. It doesn't seem to be any particular one. You can't really tell them apart much, although occasionally, like, oh yeah, that's the cow with the, horns are wonky, or looks like sorry people, there it goes. Yeah, so what was I talking about? Leaders, yeah. So
leaders of bison, yeah.
Yeah, so some have kind of wonky horns every once in a while. There is one bull, when he came to us about 2 years old, when we introduced some new ones from Wind Cave, was missing his back hoof. It was absolutely not even there. And he wasn't even bothered about it, except he limps a little, but it didn't look hurt or anything. I think he was just born without his back hoof. And he eats, he grows, but he can't always keep up. So sometimes he's with the herd, sometimes he's not, sometimes he's with the bulls, sometimes he's all by himself. But he keeps growing. So
do you want to try? There you are. You're back now.
Question?
Okay.
More. I get lots of time.
Oh, okay, great. Well, people are still interested in some answers. Beth from Wilmot has another question. How do you control invasive species? You did talk about how you do selective spraying, pulling weeds. Is that about the full answer there, or
it's a lot of work? But yeah, there's different ways. Like some of them. Well, okay, so process-wise, we hire 6 people, maybe 7 in the summer. College or just after college, young folks with strong backs, and they go out usually in groups of, and like 6 abreast, and they say that we're going to cover this 30 acres, and they just go back and forth close together looking for whatever. So like this time of year, it's reed canary grass, parsnip, white sweet clover, yellow sweet clover, red clover, bird's foot trefoil. There's only a handful that we really worry about. They're going to walk by a Queen Anne's lace. That's going to mostly go away in our plantings. We plant a lot of seed per acre. When we first started doing this, people would just toss seed around, and there was a lot of weeds, and we got better and better at it. And when we harvest the seed, we'll take like the top of the seed head, like echinacea has like hundreds of seeds in that head, and we just chop it off and dry it, and then we send it through a machine, and it kind of breaks it up in little pieces, and then we can mix a whole bunch of seed together. But there's a lot of chaff in there, so we used to maybe do 10 or 20 pounds an acre. Early on, we do 50 or 60 pounds an acre of that seed and chaff. We don't take it down to pure live seed. It's just not worth the time to get it that finely sorted. And then we do 100 and some species in a planting. So we try to make it really full of the plants so that the weeds don't get space to get in there. But it's a lot of work to go. I froze again, I see. It's a lot of work to do the weed management, which is why we don't bother with every single plant.
Of course.
There's Kentucky bluegrass, which isn't really from Kentucky, by the way, people. It's circumpolar. It's from northern Canada and northern Asia, and northern Europe. Kentucky bluegrass. It's just in the system. It's part of the new prairie. We just can't. And then the hardest thing to restore, it would be like really hard hit pasture that was either overgrazed or somehow converted to European grasses. Sometimes these things are done on purpose. Sometimes it just happens gradually. It sort of depends on the land and how it was used. Or areas that were plowed, but then let go fallow. And by the time we get them, they've been fallow for 50, 80 years and full of weeds. And so those are the hardest things to restore, because it's like, well, do you ground the whole thing up? Do you just live with what's there? So sometimes we just live with what's there. Like there's a farm field that was set aside in the CRP, the Conservation Reserve Program that the federal government will pay farmers to set land aside. And it was a landowner from the city, and she bought some land and, set it aside, and, she got a little income from it, but then she knew it was habitat, and it's from grass, but the bobolinks, that's a bird, love it. They love that really dense, it's not clumping grass. It's just, like your lawn growing wild. They love it. Yeah, bobolinks like it. That's the way it is for now. So yeah, it's a lot of work doing restoration, but we love
Really not a bad thing.
Yeah, because the idea is to get as much biodiversity as we can that we think was here, because like Aldo Leopold said, the first rule of tinkering is to save all the parts. So you don't want to just like throw away whole ecosystems and expect them to function, or even have, half the species. It may not function like it should. So one of the things we've learned is that prairie grasses, as well as forests, of course, store a lot of carbon. People always think trees store carbon. Well, yeah, they have a big trunk, but prairie grasses, never plowed or ceasing to be plowed, store a lot of carbon. Those grasses are alive and doing carbon things all the time. And so grassland is good.
Especially with their extremely deep roots.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. One more set of questions, and it's about back to the bison. This is from Joyce, who wants to know about how large are the wallows, and do they sometimes hold water and enough? I said enough to support aquatic insects.
Yes, they occasionally hold water. In our soils, they mostly don't, but there's a couple of spots where they do. And yeah, we get chorus frogs in there. I'm sure we get all kinds of insects that I don't even know of. A couple of the wallows are oddly enough at the bottom of an old quarry, and they hold water because there's rock underneath. Yeah, and some of the wallows are quite large. It's a little alarming how big some of them are, but bee habitat, those bees nest there. Certain plants grow on the edges that don't grow elsewhere, and we are more and more studying these wallows. I think if they start rolling around like the best patch of, violets for the regal fritillary, for example, we might fence it off with electric fence or something. But so far, so good. So they can be anywhere from 3 feet wide to 40 feet wide. Depends on how often they go in there, and they make new ones all the time. We have trails and wallows where we never had trails and wallows before. It is with bison. So.
Part of the fun of the job, I think. Well, Susan, thank you very much.
Sure.
This was delightful, and I bet a lot of people want to go there. I let me say, I was there a few years ago, and it is a beautiful place. It makes you realize how lovely our state is in its natural condition, and at this time of year, I think it would just blow you away. So, so thank you very much, Susan. Thank you to the Friends of the Green Bay Trail. And we'll see you all at the next one, hopefully on June 7th with Doug Tellamy. Thanks very much, everyone.
All righty. Thanks, everybody. Bye.